Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today, 2 days before Veterans Day, we pay tribute to the men and women who served in the armed forces with an offering of a song and poetry. This is Bob Beecher's idea. We begin with the wonderful singer, Jennifer Clymer.
This was Harry's suggestion, and I always listen to what Harry says to do. So here we go. How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? How many seas must the white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? Yes, how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friends, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Yes, and how many years must a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? And how many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? Yes, and how many times can a man turn his head and pretend that he just doesn't see? The answer, my friends, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Yes, and how many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? And how many ears must one man have before he can hear people cry? And yes, how many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
Beautiful, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you.
My father served in World War I. He was 14 when he joined. He lied and said he was 16. My oldest brother was on the oil tanker, the USS Ramapo, in Pearl Harbor when it was attacked. He survived. My second oldest brother was a chaplain in the Army in World War II. I joined the Navy right out of high school and served 3 years. I've always had the deepest respect for the men and women who serve in America's armed forces. Here's my poem to begin the reading. Square that hat, sailor. Square that hat, sailor. I left home to join the Navy, like my brother before me wore bell-bottom trousers, coat of navy blue. She loved the sailor, he loved her too. Learned Morse code, radioman, E5, drawing E6 pay. Never went to sea. Served at San Diego, Pearl Harbor, Waiwa. Discharged honorably 60 years ago. My brother became an FBI agent, I an actor. Awake at 4 a.m. in East Hollywood, I smelled the sea, walking alongside the deaths of our protectors. Inscription by Herman Melville. He was born in 1819 and died in 1891. To them who crossed the flood and climbed the hill, with eyes upon the heavenly flag intent, and through the deathful tumult went, even unto death, to them this stone erect where they were overthrown, of more than victory, the monument. In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Field. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Field. Troop Train by Carl Shapiro. It stops the town we come through. Workers raise their oily arms in good salute and grin. Kids scream at us at a circus. Businessmen glance hopefully and go their measured way. And women standing at their dumbstruck door more slowly wave and seem to warn us back, as if a tear blinding the course of war might once dissolve our iron in their sweet wish. Fruit of the world, oh clustered on ourselves, we hang as from a cornucopia in total friendliness, with faces bunched to spray the streets with catcalls and with leers. A bottle smashes on the moving ties, and eyes fixed on a lady smiling pink, stretched like a rubber band and snap and sting. The mouth that wants the drink of water kiss, and on through crummy continents and days, deliberate, grimy, slightly drunk we crawl, the good bad boys of circumstance and chance, whose bucket helmets bang the empty wall where twist the murdered bodies of our packs next to the guns that only seem themselves, and distance like a strap adjusted shrinks, tightens across the shoulder and holds firm. Here is a deck of cards. Out of this hand, dealer, deal me my luck, a pair of bulls, the right draw to a flush, the one-eyed jack. Diamonds and hearts are red, but spades are black, and spades are spades and clubs are clovers, black. But deal me winners, souvenirs of peace. This stands to reason and arithmetic. Luck also travels, and not all come back. Trains lead to ships, and ships to death or trains, and trains to death or trucks, and trucks to death, or trucks lead to the march to death, or that survival which is all our hope. And death leads back to trucks and trains and ships, but life leads to the march. O flag, at last, the place of life found after trains and death, nightfall of nations, brilliant after war. And now here's the wonderful Helen Richman.
Veterans of the 70s by Marvin Bell. His army jacket bore the white rectangle of one who has torn off his name. He sat mute at the round table where the tripwire veterans ate breakfast. They were foxhole buddies who went stateside without leaving the war. They had the look of men who held their breath and now their tongues. What is to say beyond that said by the fathers who bent lower and lower as the war went on, spines curving toward the ground on which sons sat sandbagged with ammo belts enough to make fine lace of enemy flesh and blood. Now these who survived, who got back in cargo planes emptied at the front, lived hiddenly in the woods, behind fence wires strung through tin cans. Better an alarm than the constant nightmare of something moving on its belly to make your skin crawl, with the sensory memory of foxhole living. The Unknown Soldier by Melvin B. Tolson. I was a Minuteman at Concord Bridge. I was a frigate gunner on Lake Erie. I was a mortarman at Stony Ridge. I fought at San Juan Hill and Chateau Thierry. I braved Corregidor and the Arctic Sea. The index finger brings democracy. These states bred freedom in and in my bone, old as the New Testament of Plymouth Bay, when the founding fathers laid the cornerstone and rued the 13 clocks that would not say the hour on the hour. I nerved myself with them under the noose in the hand of the tyrant's whim. I've seen the alien ships of destiny plow the sea mountains between the hemispheres. I've seen the Gulf Stream of our history littered with derelicts of corsair careers. I've watched the watchmen cry, the bars, when midnight held the funeral of stars. I saw horizontal states grow vertical from Plymouth Harbor to the Golden Gate, till wedged against skyscapes imperial, their glories elbowed the decrees of fate. These states bred freedom in and in my bone. I hymn their virtues and their sins atone. The tares and wheat grow in the self-same field, the rose and thorn companion on the bush, the gold and gravel cuddle in the yield, the oil and grit and dirt together gush, the Gordian knot to be or not to be snares not the free. My faith props the tomorrows, for I know the roots of liberty, tough-fibered, feed on the blood of tyrants and martyrs. The Judas blow tortures the branches till they twist and bleed, and yet no Caesar, vitamin on loot, can liberty uproot. I am the unknown soldier. I open doors to the rights of man. Letters incarnadine, these shrines of freedom are mine as well as yours. These ashes of freemen, yours as well as mine. Soldier from the Wars Returning by A.E. Houseman. Soldier from the wars returning, spoiler of the taken town, here is ease that asks not earning. Turn you in and sit you down. Peace is come and wars are over. Welcome you and welcome all, while the charger crops the clover and his bridle hangs in stall. Now no more of winter's biting, filth in trench from fall to spring, summers full of sweat and fighting for the Khazar or the king. Rest you, charger, rust your bridle. Kings and Khazars, keep your pay. Soldier, sit you down and idle at the inn of night for a. Dreamers by Siegfried Sassoon. Soldiers are citizens of death's gray land, drawing no dividend from time's tomorrows. In the great hour of destiny they stand, each with his feuds and jealousies and sorrows. Soldiers are sworn to action. They must win some flaming, fatal climax with their lives. Soldiers are dreamers. When the guns begin, they think of firelit homes, clean beds, and wives. I see them in foul dugouts, gnawed by rats, and in the ruined trenches, lashed with rain, dreaming of things they did with balls and bats, and mocked by hopeless longing to regain bank holidays and picture shows and spats, and going to the office in the train. A Veteran by Reginald Gibbons. My father came down not killed, from among others, killers or killed, for whom he'd worn a uniform, and he lived a long afterward, a steady man on the flattest of plains. I called after him many times, surprised when I heard the catch in my own voice. He didn't know how to find the solace of listening to someone else speak of what he'd seen and survived. He himself closed his own mouth against his own words. In the wrong sequence, his spirit, then his mind, at last his body crossed over that infamous peat, inky, metaphorical water that has no far shore. I think he was carried like a leaf in currents so gentle that a duckling, had it been alive, could have braved them, but too strong for a leaf, and saturated with minerals that steadily replaced organic cells, the water turned my father, an ex-soldier, to leaf-delicate stone inscribed with the axioms of countless veins. Not to Keep by Robert Frost. They sent him back to her. The letter came saying, and she could have him. And before she could be sure there was no hidden ill under the formal writing, he was in her sight, living. They gave him back to her alive. How else? They are not known to send the dead. And not disfigured visibly, his face, his hands. She had to look, to ask, what was it, dear? And she had given all. And still she had all. They the lucky. Wasn't she glad now? Everything seemed won, and all the rest for them permissible ease. She had to ask, what was it, dear? Enough, yet not enough. A bullet through and through, high in the breast. Nothing but what good care and medicine and rest, and you a week, can cure me of. To go again. The same grim giving to do over for them both. She dared no more than ask him with her eyes, how was it with him, for a second trial? And with his eyes, he asked her not to ask.
Thank you for that poignant reading, Helen. After the War by Rachel Galvin. When he got to the farmhouse, he rifled through the cabinets, drawers, and cupboards, and his buddies did too. The place was abandoned, or so he thought, and his buddies did too. He tried to talk to people in town, and his buddies did too. But he was the only one whose Yiddish made it across into German. They took his meaning. He, in the farmhouse, took a camera and a gun. But his buddies, who knows? About the gun, it's also hard to say. But after the war, he took up photography. Why not? And shot beautiful women for years. Got pretty good at it. And how? Won prizes and engraved plates, put them in a drawer, forgot the war, forgot his buddies, forgot the women, forgot the drawer. Armistice by Sophie Jewett. The water sings along our keel, the wind falls to a whispering breath. I look into your eyes and feel no fear of life or death. So near is love, so far away, the losing strife of yesterday. We watch the swallow skim and dip. Some magic bids the world be still. Life stands with finger upon lip. Love hath his gentle will. Though hearts have bled and tears have burned, the river floweth unconcerned. We pray the fickle flag of truce still float deceitfully and fair. Our eyes must love its sweet abuse. This hour we will not care, though just beyond tomorrow's gate, arrayed and strong, the battle wait. And now we have the terrific Bill Bassett to read. Bill.
From the Tao Te Ching, by Lao Tzu, translated by Stephen Mitchell. Weapons are the tools of violence. All decent men detest them. Weapons are the tools of fear. A decent man will avoid them except in the direst necessity, and if compelled, will use them only with the utmost restraint. Peace is the highest value. If the peace has been shattered, how can he be content? His enemies are not demons, but human beings like himself. He doesn't wish them personal harm, nor does he rejoice in victory. How could he rejoice in victory and delight in the slaughter of men? He enters a battle gravely, with sorrow and with great compassion, as if he were attending a funeral. Facing It by Yusuf Komunyakaa. My black face fades, hiding inside the black granite. I said I wouldn't, damn it, no tears. I'm stone, I'm flesh. My clouded reflection eyes me like a bird of prey, the profile of night slanted against morning. I turn this way, the stone lets me go. I turn that way, I'm inside the Vietnam Veterans Memorial again, depending on the light to make a difference. I go down the 58,022 names, half expecting to find my own in letters like smoke. I touch the name Andrew Johnson. I see the booby trap's white flash. Names shimmer on a woman's blouse, but when she walks away, the names stay on the wall. Brushstrokes flash, a red bird's wings cutting across my stare. The sky, a plane in the sky. A white vet's image floats closer to me. Then his pale eyes look through mine. I'm a window. He's lost his right arm inside the stone. In the black mirror, a woman's trying to erase names. No, she's brushing a boy's hair. Strange Meeting by Wilfred Owen. It seemed that out of battle I escaped down some profound, dull tunnel, long since scooped through granites which titanic wars had groined. Yet also their encumbered sleepers groaned, too fast in thought or death to be bestirred. Then, as I probed them, one sprang up and stared with piteous recognition in his fixed eyes, lifting distressful hands as if to bless, and by his smile I knew that sullen hall. By his dead smile I knew we stood in hell. With 1,000 fears that vision's face was grained, yet no blood reached there from the upper ground, and no guns thumped or down the flues made moan. Strange friend, I said, there is no cause to mourn. None, said that other, save the undone years, the hopelessness. Whatever hope is yours was my life also. I went hunting wild after the wildest beauty in the world, which lies not calm in eyes or braided hair, but mocks the steady running of the hour. And if it grieves, grieves richer than here. For by my glee might many men have laughed, and of my weeping something had been left which must die now. I mean the truth untold, the pity of war, the pity war distilled. Now men will go content with what we spoiled, or discontent, boil bloody and be spilled. They will be swift with swiftness of the tigress. None will break ranks, though nations trek from progress. Courage was mine, and I had mystery. Wisdom was mine, and I had mastery. To miss the march of this retreating world into vain citadels that are not walled. Then, when much blood had clogged their chariot wheels, I would go up and wash them from sweet wells, even with truths that lie too deep for taint. I would have poured my spirit without stint, but not through wounds, not on the cess of war. Foreheads of men have bled where no wounds were. I am the enemy you killed, my friend. I knew you in the dark, for so you frowned yesterday through me as you jabbed and killed. I parried, but my hands were loath and cold. Let us sleep now. Grandeur of Ghosts by Siegfried Sassoon. When I have heard small talk about great men, I climb to bed, light my 2 candles, then consider what was said and put aside what such a one remarked and someone else replied. They have spoken lightly of my deathless friends, lamps for my gloom, hands guiding where I stumble, quoting for shallow conversational ends what Shelley shrilled, what Blake once wildly muttered. How can they use such names and not be humble? I have sat silent, angry at what they uttered. The dead bequeathed them life. The dead have said what these can only memorize and mumble. From The Return of the Heroes by Walt Whitman. I saw the day the return of the heroes, yet the heroes never surpassed shall never return. Them that day I saw not. I saw the interminable corps, I saw the processions of armies, I saw them approaching, defiling by with divisions, streaming northward, their work done, camping a while in clusters of mighty camps. No holiday soldiers, youthful, yet veterans, worn, swart, handsome, strong from the stock of homestead and workshop, hardened of many a long campaign and sweaty march, inured on many a hard-fought, bloody field. A pause. The armies wait. A million flushed, embattled conquerors wait. The world, too, waits. Then, soft as breaking night and sure as dawn, they melt, they disappear. Exult, O lands, victorious lands, not there your victory on those red shuddering fields, but here, and hence your victory. Melt, melt away, ye armies, disperse, ye blue-clad soldiers. Resolve ye, back again, give up for good your deadly arms. Other the arms, the fields, henceforth for you, or south or north, with saner wars, sweet wars, life-giving wars. As toilsome I wandered Virginia's woods. As toilsome I wandered Virginia's woods to the music of rustling leaves kicked by my feet, for 'twas autumn, I marked at the foot of a tree the grave of a soldier. Mortally wounded he, and buried on the retreat, easily all I could understand. The halt of a midday hour, then up, no time to lose, yet this sign left, on a tablet scrawled and nailed on the tree by the grave. Bold, cautious, true, and my loving comrade. Long, long I muse, then on my way go wandering. Many a changeful season to follow, and many a scene of life, yet at times through changeful season and scene, abrupt, alone, or in the crowded street, comes before me the unknown soldier's grave, comes the inscription rude in Virginia's woods. Bold, cautious, true, and my loving comrade. From The Wound Dresser. O maidens and young men I love and that love me, what you ask of my days, those the strangest and sudden your talking recalls. Soldier alert, I arrive after a long march covered with sweat and dust. In the nick of time I come, plunge in the fight, loudly shout in the rush of successful charge. Enter the captured works, yet lo, like a swift-running river, they fade, pass, and are gone. I dwell not on soldiers' perils or soldiers' joys. Both I remember well, many the hardships, few the joys, yet I was content. But in silence, in dreams, projections, while the world of gain and appearance and mirth goes on, so soon what is over, forgotten, and waves wash the imprints off the sand. With hinged knees returning, I enter the doors, while for you up there, whoever you are, follow without noise and be of strong heart. Bearing the bandages, water and sponge, straight and swift to my wounded I go, where they lie on the ground after the battle brought in, where their priceless blood reddens the grass, the ground, or to the rows of the hospital tent, or under the roofed hospital, to the long rows of cots up and down each side I return. To each and all, one after another, I draw near. Not one do I miss. An attendant follows holding a tray. He carries a refuse pail, soon to be filled with clotted rags and blood, emptied and filled again. I onward go. I stop with hinged knees and steady hand to dress wounds. I am firm with each. The pangs are sharp, yet unavoidable. One turns to me, his appalling, appealing eyes. Poor boy, I never knew you, yet I think I could not refuse this moment to die for you, if that would save you. Thanks in old age. Thanks in old age. Thanks ere I go. For health, the midday sun, the impalpable air, for life, mere life, for precious, ever-lingering memories of you, my mother dear, you, father, you brothers, sisters, friends, for all my days, though for those not of peace alone, the days of war the same, for gentle words, caresses, gifts from foreign lands, for shelter, wine, and meat, for sweet appreciation. You, distant, dim, unknown, or young or old, countless unspecified readers, beloved. We never met and ne'er shall meet, and yet our souls embrace, long, close, and long. For beings, groups, love, deeds, words, books, for colors, forms, for all the brave, strong men, devoted, hardy men, who forward sprung in freedom's help, all years, all lands, for braver, stronger, more devoted men. A special laurel, ere I go to life's war's chosen ones, the cannoneers of song and thought, the great artillerists, the foremost leaders, captains of the soul. As soldier from an unended war returned, as traveler out of myriads to the long procession retrospective. Thanks, joyful thanks, a soldier's travelers. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill, for that splendid reading, and welcome to the Poetry Hour. It's great to have you join us. You know, we have 19 minutes of time left. When I was going through these poems, I read a lot of poems. It would be difficult to continue to read a lot of them because there's so much death and pain, and you know, you get your mind just filled with all that. But I just wanted to have each one of us talk a little bit about the reading, whatever you want to talk about. I will just start this reading by saying about an article I read in the LA Times today. It was about a Marine. After he came back from war, he was very filled with pain, and he said that he would sit in his room and he would take a 45 and would put it to his temple, and he would start to pull the trigger. And then he put it down and he just started writing poetry, and poems just kept flowing out of him. So somehow, even though war is difficult to deal with, it is one of the top subject matters, you know, war, death, that any writer can deal with. I always think it's important to take whatever comes to you, you know, joy, love, death, in this case, war, and turn it into something creative if you're able. I know a lot of people could not articulate and they were quiet. You know, in that one poem that, oh gosh, I forget which one it was. I think it was a Wilfred Owen poem, Grandeur of Ghosts by Siegfried Sassoon. He said, the dead have said what these can only memorize and mumble. I mean, I always feel so humbled, you know, just to even try to give this small offering to the world. Even, you know, as a young man, I was in the Navy for 3 years, but I never saw war. And years later in my small town, they put up a veterans plaque in the small city park, and they wanted to put my name up there along with my father and others who had been at war. And I said, I don't really belong there. And yet all of us who participate in the service, whether peacetime or war, we're all veterans. And so even though it's touching and it's difficult, it's important for each one of us to give what we can to those who have served. Bill, would you or Helen, one of you like to talk? Why don't you start with you, Bill? You were in the Marine Reserve, I believe.
Yes, I was in the Marine Reserve. My greatest memory from my service was we spent a summer doing sort of reserve boot camp, and part of it was to go to the rifle range, the shooting range down in, I think it was Chillicothe, Ohio, southern Ohio. And at the final night, they had a big beer party, and the next morning we were waiting for transportation back to Columbus, Ohio, where our base was. And I guess it was my suggestion to another fellow that we go down to the butts, or the area behind the targets, and collect spent bullets as souvenirs. And so we did. But while we had collected a bunch, someone came running down and said, "Get back, the sergeant wants to see you." And he said, "Now take all of these that you've collected and throw them in the trash." Well, the trash was the night before's beer party trash. He says, "Now dig them out of there." So we had to go scrabbling through the late night party's trash and find all the bullets. He says, "Now get your spoon out of your mess kit and follow me out to this field. I want you to bury each one of these bullets in a grave 3 inches by 4 inches by 3 inches deep that you dig with your spoon." Oh my goodness, well. And we must have had, I don't know if we had 100 bullets each, but here we were digging little graves for these bullets. It says, "Now I want you to take a twig like this and a blossom of a, like this, and make a little cross and mark each grave." Meanwhile, we're waiting for the last transportation to go back to Columbus, Ohio. And the blisters are forming on our fingers from digging with a spoon in this hard-packed earth. But we finally did get a ride back to base.
Thank you, Bill. What would you like to say, Helen?
Well, first of all, I would just like to thank all the veterans for their bravery. And I do have a husband and a brother who served in the Navy in World War II. My brother, Alfred Landis, was in a destroyer, the USS Guyot. And my husband, Peter Mark Richman, was on an aircraft carrier, the USS Ranger. I remember all of the incredible stories that he was 17 and enlisted in the Navy. And he would talk about that terrible sound when the airplane was coming into the carrier and it wasn't going to make it, and there was some kind of a siren was going off, and many is the plane that did not land correctly because it was a training thing, this aircraft carrier. And he learned a lot in the Navy, and I'm proud of him. I'm proud of my brother and all those who served.
Well, I remember, I was in the Navy 3 years and never went aboard ship, but I visited 2 friends. One was on the USS Shangri-La and one was on the USS Midway, a carrier. And those small quarters, you always feel the air condition, blowing in, and all the tightness of it all. And I'm always glad, it may sound wrong, but I'm glad I get motion sickness as I've gotten older. So I'm glad I didn't have to serve aboard ship. But I always, I think the reason I joined the Navy was twofold, maybe more than 2. But when I got out of high school, I didn't have enough money to go to college. And I didn't want to work at, I'd worked as a clothing salesman in my little town. And so the other reason was my brother, my oldest brother. I always looked up to him, and I liked the uniforms too, the bell-bottom trousers, and then later on, the enlisted men they never got to dress quite as nice as the officers, but then later on they gave the chief petty officers, maybe I'm mixing things up, those type of sport coats, whatever you want to call them. But, we keep going through this over and over, the wars. And I kind of like what, Lao Tzu said about, that we go into he enters a battle gravely with sorrow and with great compassion, as if he were entering a funeral. And, that's what I also like about Walt Whitman, his compassion. Years ago during the Iraq War, we got all our information from CNN at that time. That was the main one. And I thought, I'm going to go and read Specimen Days by Walt Whitman, because he was in Washington, D.C., and he would be near the battles. And then he would go, as we heard in those poems that Bill read, and nurse the soldiers. And I thought, what courage, to be able to do that, and what love, that Walt Whitman had to be able to do that and to care for his brother. And in our time, I know there would be women too that he would be tending, because so many women have served in armed forces. At that time, it was mostly men. And then in prose, some of the great books of war have been Hemingway, Farewell to Arms, and Stephen Crane's The Red Badge of Courage. And, in our time, a little before us, a few decades ago, Catch-22. But, what do? We have to defend ourselves. Thank God we defended ourselves in World War II. That was one war we definitely had to win, and we did. And so, thank God for all of our soldiers who won that. Anything you want to say outside of the subject of war about just poetry in general? Bill, I notice you read a lot. I notice you read Pynchon a lot. Do you read much poetry? And if so, what are your thoughts about poetry in general?
I am not an avid reader of poetry. I find what Pynchon does very often with language becomes poetic. But aside from T.S. Eliot, and I'm hard pressed to throw out the names of poets that I've really enjoyed. I think there's a Larkin and we were mentioning our brothers. I had a half brother who was much older than I. He had been he had been a member of the CCC, the Civil Conservation Corps, back in the 30s, I guess. And then he joined the Marines and was with the Marines in China, but had come back from China saying that there was a world war coming. He could see it from there. And then he joined the army and was finally killed at the invasion of Anzio, the Anzio beachhead and the drive up the Italian peninsula.
Helen, you've read a lot of different types of poetry during our last couple of years, and you always do it so marvelously. What are some of your thoughts just in general about some of the poetry you've read, or specifically some that you have read?
Well, today's poetry, actually each one was quite different, but that Robert Frost one, keep, what's it called? Yeah. I mean, to think that you survive. Oh, it's Not to Keep by Robert Frost. To think you went through that and you're going to have to go back again, it's like too much to even think. And the way he expressed in this poem that there were no more words to say, even just their eyes, and that last sentence, and with his eyes he asked her not to ask, was like it really got me. Well, I love Robert Frost anyway. I think one of the few poems that I ever memorized was Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Eve, which I love. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. Yes, I just love his writing. And so sure enough, that was the one for me that I read today.
Yeah, that was a surprise, Helen, when I, found that poem.
It was? Well,
yeah,
thank you for giving it to me.
Yeah, I love that too. And, Jennifer has asked a question about the draft and our thoughts, or my thoughts, ours, when it was dissolved. And the one thing that we saw in when we were, when I was growing up in the late 60s and early 70s, all the anti-war protests, and it was because of the draft. And, that seemed to be the last time we saw a large amount of activism. Obviously there was the women's marches, that was a big thing. And, there have been other things, in terms of gender and race, where there have been huge protests. But I went to the war, I volunteered. I didn't want to be drafted. Right now, I don't think a lot of people would go, because some of the wars we've gone into, whether Iraq or even Syria or, Afghanistan, some of them were very tough to win, and we didn't win them, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. It's just the way it was and is going into other countries. But I don't think our country is ready for a draft right now. Briefly, just if I may go back to what Helen said, one of my favorite films is From Here to Eternity by Fred Zinnemann. And in that, the main character, Monty Cliff, he played Robert E. Lee Pruitt. Well, he may have been one of the main characters along with Burt Lancaster and Deborah Carr. And toward the end of the picture, he's sitting at a bar with Donna Reed, and he tells her he's going to re-up. And she says, "Why are you going to re-enlist the way the Army's treated you?" And he said a line that's always stuck with me. He said, "Just because you love something doesn't mean it has to love you back." And that's true. And I look at poetry as we work hard at our poetry, and we get the craft as good as we can, and then we give it, and we don't know how other people will take it. But I think that poetry is a gift, and I think sacrificing your life for our country is obviously, the highest gift. So, that's all I can say. And I just want to thank both of you for tremendous readings. You both have so much feeling and understanding of the poetry. And thank you, Jennifer, and the Creative Chaos team, once again, for allowing us to present poetry